Welcome back to today's episode of Peak Degeneracy. So today we have a couple of battles playing as the Americans. So what I used for my lineup, I have the premium Flamethrower squad. You could do the same thing if you have the Italian guys in the German tech tree. And then I included two normal Flamethrower squads. Admittedly, one of them isn't completely maxed out, but they're both 7-man squads. I think I just need to add one more specialist to one of them. They actually might be maxed out, and I might just be an idiot. I guess they are. I get like 2 assaulters in one, and an AT soldier in the other, so it kind of throws me off. I threw some other stuff on the lineup just to have a full lineup, but to be honest, most of the other stuff didn't really matter too much. I have a machine gun squad, I never used them. I have a radio squad, again, I never pulled them out. I think I pulled out the APC once, I think I pulled out the paratroopers once or twice. And I pulled out the planes a couple times, but that was primarily in the second battle, and we'll get into why in a little bit. But basically, I think flamethrowers are actually still in a pretty good spot. Initially, when they nerfed them a couple months ago, I didn't really care for how they felt. Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I actually think they feel much more authentic, and I think that makes them feel more immersive now than they used to be. Because you used to be able to run around like a jackrabbit and just fly all over the place, spew your fire everywhere, just be a pure menace. But now, basically what happens is when you go to shoot your flamethrower, your guy slows down because he braces, basically. You know, he's walking, he's getting pushed back because he's got this high pressure stream of molten death flying out of him. Like I said, it feels authentic. Initially when this first dropped, I played around with them a little bit, and I kind of thought to myself, you know what, I think I'd rather just run assaulters, because I can run and gun faster. I feel too vulnerable and I have to slow down. Like, it feels good, like, authentic experience-wise, but it feels bad gameplay-wise, because before I could just run around and shoot people, and they were just more effective. Playing with them today, they actually didn't feel that bad. Now, mind you, this is all BR5 gameplay. At BR3, it might have felt worse because the flamethrowers have significantly less range. But this is all like second tier flamethrowers, and those have quite a bit of range, so you can reach out and hit somebody even if you're not right next to them. So being slowed down doesn't impact you as much. That being said, I think that the games more or less speak for themselves. The first game I was top of the scoreboard, the second game I don't think I was top. But I was at least top quarter, top third, something like that. I was towards the top. The first game was a much more close quarters map. We were defending, and I think there were a lot more places for me to hide or corners for me to come around and surprise people. But at the same time, because it's more close quarters, there weren't as many long lines of sight for people to shoot me from a distance, and it made it very effective. If I look at some of the other peak degeneracies that we've done recently, we've done tanks, and we've done planes, and we've done rifle grenades / impact grenades. This is probably more effective than the rifle grenades and impact grenades, but it ranks below the other ones. As we continue doing this series, I'm curious to see how they're going to end up stacking up against, well, basically my normal lineup, which is a lot of assaulters. I like to go fast, what can I say? And I like to be up in their face. And I'll probably also do one with like a paratrooper spam. It won't be perfect because I don't have 3 paratroopers for any nation, but I can get like 2 and rotate them, so there's that. And I probably won't do half tracks. I don't think half tracks are spammable, but the thought crossed my mind at least. Regardless, I might come up with some other stuff, but compared to what we've already run, they're effective. I don't know if they're more effective than running a normal balanced lineup. I think that you can cover most bases with them, and at the end of the day, they are 7-man squads, depending on which squad you take. And there's pros and cons to both of the squad setups that I have. So, on the one hand, if you take a full, normal flamethrower squad, you're only getting 2 flamethrowers, which depends on what you're trying to get out of them. If you're just there for the flamethrower, it's probably worse because you have less flamethrower trooper depth. Because if the first guy goes down, you only have 1 more flamethrower, second guy goes down, you have no more flamethrowers, now you're just a glorified assault squad. Now, on the flip side, you do get 2 flamethrowers, which are arguably better than assaulters situationally sometimes. It really depends. And then you can stick 1 or 2 assaulters, depends on how you want to set up your squad in. And then you can take riflemen, like 2 riflemen and an engineer. Now, I think you always want the engineer, and it's actually not just for the rally point this time. The rally point is really good, and it does give your team a lot of potential power. But the real benefit to having the engineer is that you can build yourself ammo boxes, and if your flamethrower is empty, you can full reload it off an ammo box. So that is kind of nice, and it is kind of big. Also, theoretically, you could build amponets, depending on what faction you are. At least I think that's factional. It might not be anymore. You might be able to do as the Americans. I didn't look or try to do it. Now I mentioned I was playing this at BR5, so depending on what your preference is, you can actually make this effectively an assault squad. And that's really because the M2 carbine exists. So, for example, I mentioned I had an AT soldier on one squad, and I instead had 2 assaulters on a different one. At BR5, realistically, taking the 2 assaulters doesn't really matter, because you can give all of your riflemen, engineers, AT soldiers, whatever, M2 carbines. And that allows them to play very well in the short to mid game. Now, I think I would just about always give the flamethrower troopers M1 Garands or Johnsons, and that's mostly because the flamethrower is already a short to mid-range weapon depending on which flamethrower you have. Like, if you've got the tier 2 flamethrower, like BR4, when I say tier 2 I mean like the second upgraded flamethrower you unlock. So, if you have those, you can play into the mid-game pretty well, and you have basically the same effective range as a submachine gun. If you're not there and you're playing at a lower BR, this kind of is a moot point, but you would want a longer ranged weapon. But regardless, I think the M1 Garand serves you better on your flamethrower soldiers because you can already kill things at short and mid range very well with the flamethrower. So having the M1 Garand allows you to reach out and touch people that are a little bit further away. And then the rest of your squad can have M2 carbines. They'll do great on the AI because they're automatic, they have bayonets. When you switch to them, you'll do great with them because it's basically a submachine gun. And then you get the added benefit of having an extra specialist. And they don't have to be AT soldiers, but you don't have a ton of choices. You could alternatively pick up a radio operator. It really just depends on what you want. I think the AT soldier for the Americans is kind of iffy, but if you were playing Russia or Germany, I think it would have a lot of value. Now, there are some shortcomings to running the flamethrower spam. Like, it really depends. Both of the matches that I played for this were both defensive matches, but I mean, I've used flamethrowers a lot in this game in the past, so I understand how they perform in an offensive role. And really, that is to say, as an offensive weapon, they perform very, very well, because the enemy's usually going to be in a concentrated area. They're going to be in usually somewhat confined areas as well, and that's really where the flamethrower flourishes. So think like if you're on Tunisia, some of these buildings have courtyards. Sometimes the objective's in a building that is off the courtyard, or it's in the courtyard itself. Regardless, people who want to defend that point have to be inside that courtyard or inside the building, which are both small places where people get very clustered up. Flamethrower is great there. Think about fighting on Normandy. You're attacking, you're going through these narrow streets in these narrow towns, or you're going between hedgerows. It's all relatively close quarters. Now, again, there are exceptions. We'll get there. When you're defending, it's kind of the same thing, where if you're on one of these more close-quartered maps, the enemy basically gets funneled into kill zones that you can really take advantage of with a flamethrower. So, if you're on Normandy and they're trying to attack the church, there are very few ways. Well, actually, I feel like there's a lot of ways to get into that church, but it feels like there are very few ways to get into the church. You basically have 2 holes in the wall and a door, and sometimes there are like windows that you can climb up through, but that's not always reliable, because climbing in this game isn't always the most reliable thing in the world. But that is to say that the enemy has to come into your confined area, and if you're pre-prepared, like if you stuff your squad halfway up the bell tower and you just hang out on the first floor with your flamethrower, you can kill squads as they try to get in, and it becomes very difficult to get in because the flamethrower is one of the few methods of crowd control in this game. So you'll often find that even if the flamethrower doesn't kill you, even if it's just tickling you and annoying you, it'll light you on fire. And the problem with being lit on fire isn't just that it's a dot damage on you, it's that it interrupts your ability to do actions. So if you're in the middle of a reload and you get lit on fire, your guy won't finish the reload. He'll just keep sitting there, spamming the reload, until you either put yourself out or you die. So this is to say that if you have a map that favors close quarters, flamethrowers can be exceptionally powerful. Now, there are drawbacks. Number one, you can kill your teammates, and you can really screw with your team this way. Even when you're genuinely trying to be a good guy and you're not trying to kill your teammates, it's really easy to kill your teammates. Like, fire bad. Now, the other drawback, and this comes into the second battle that I have here, is that the flamethrowers are awesome when you're attacking and you can go to the enemy, and they're awesome when you're defending and you're in a relatively close-quartered area. But if you are defending and you're on a more open map, then they are borderline worthless. And it really just comes down to 2 things. Number one, the range on flamethrowers, even the tier 2 flamethrowers, is just not enough to deal with people sitting on the other side of a farm, or sitting on the other side of a hangar. The other thing is that flamethrowers are bulky, and flamethrowers are heavy, and they slow you down. So, in my first battle, I more or less exclusively played the flamethrower squads. I think I got into playing at one point because there was a tank that I wanted to kill, and I think I went in, rocketed the tank, shot down a plane or 2, and then crashed myself into the water so I could get back to burning people. In the second game, I spawned my flame troopers a few times, and eventually I kind of just gave up on spawning them. Now, there's 2 things to this. Number one, we were defending on the first objective of Airfield, which is a big-ass hangar surrounded by a big-ass field. So, even if they're in the objective, they might still be out of range of you. So, there's that. Which, if you're in the open, and you're out of range, and they can see you, and they're using a gun with bullets instead of fire, well, you're probably gonna die. The other thing is that there was a Panther that was in an exceptionally good position, and I kept trying to kill him, and I kept failing at killing him. Now, most of that is just on me being a dingus and not actually killing the guy. I should have been able to kill him with like my first or second pass with a plane, but I either kept going short or I kept going long, and admittedly I wasn't pulling the best approaches for it, but it meant that going outside of the hangar to harass them on their way up was just not a possibility, because there was a tank sitting there that would just kill me whenever I came out of the building. Admittedly, I probably could have sat there right along the wall and just killed them whenever they came through the door, but to be honest, that would have probably gotten kind of boring kind of quickly. I like going out and attacking the enemy, or counter-attacking, or maneuvering around when I'm defending the different objectives. Like, I like to do more than just sit in one place and defend. I like to seek out and destroy enemy spawn beacons. I like to counter wherever the enemy's pushing. I just like to do stuff. I'm not a huge fan of just sitting and waiting. But I think the only way you could have effectively used the flamethrower on a map like that, given the situation, would be to go up to the wall that separates you from the enemy field, and just wait for them to come through the doors and just torch them when they come through the doors. It probably would have been effective, but eh. So, all of that is to say that flamethrowers can be very situationally powerful, but they're because they're situational, they don't have the same general purpose, just chill gameplay with massive kill counts that you can get with a plane or you can get with a tank. I know that we've discussed this a little bit with the other ones, but like tanks, for example, can be situational too. If the other team's really on their A game and they just want to pop tanks, there are ways to do that. It's the same thing with planes. If you want to sit there and play a fighter all game, or you want to sit there in an AA gun all game, you can absolutely deny the sky. So, even though those ones can be situational, I feel like they're less situational than the flamethrower, because the flamethrower isn't so much dependent on an enemy player deciding to counter you. It's dependent on you getting a map that doesn't counter you. Like a map, a role, and a game type. And if the game itself decides to counter you, there are situational ways to use the flamethrowers, and on most maps, there are places where they'll be effective, but I don't think that they're reliable enough to base your entire lineup around them. I think in general they'll outperform the rifle grenades and the impact grenades, but admittedly, the rifle grenades and the impact grenades are basically good on every map. It's just the skill floor and the skill ceiling for the rifle grenades is relatively narrow. The skill floor for the flamethrowers is pretty low, but I think the skill ceiling, or like, maybe not the skill ceiling, that's probably not the right way to phrase this. Like, it's not the skill ceiling, it's the score potential ceiling, I think is much higher. I think what it comes down to is that the rifle grenades are more limited in how many of them you can use, or how much, or how frequently you can use them, and on top of that, if you walk around a corner and you're in like a building, you might be able to shoot it off into the guy who's right in front of you around the corner, and you'll probably kill the guys that are surrounding him, but you're probably not going to kill the whole room, and you're also probably going to kill yourself in the process. And if you take the flamethrower and you get into that same situation, there's a really good chance that you're just going to clear the whole room and light the whole room on fire, and leave a bunch of fire on the ground that'll light the next guy who comes into the room on fire. So, I think that you have the potential to do a lot more with a flamethrower if the situation favors you. That being said, I think the skill floor for like using a flamethrower and for using a rifle grenade launcher or an impact grenade are pretty much the same. Like, it really does not take a whole lot of effort to do either of them. I guess the last thing to get into, I did discuss a little bit that I was using the premium squad. The big difference with the premium squad versus the non-premium squad is you're giving up 2 guys in your squad, but instead you're getting 4 flamethrowers instead of 2, so you're doubling your flamethrowers, and it honestly feels really good, because you can swap out their primaries, so you can give them all M1 or M2 carbines, or give them all M1 Garands, or whatever. It's the Germans, you can give them all FG-42-2s. You get the idea. They're a very powerful squad. They're more focused, or more niche, more limited, in that they really only kill infantry and, you know, annoy tanks and blind them, but they really just kill infantry. They're basically all flamethrowers. So, whether that's an advantage or disadvantage probably depends situationally, kind of like I discussed before. If you're using the non-premium one, and you get on a map where flamethrowers are bad, you still have, like, 5 other guys that essentially make up the core of an assault squad, so you're not really as SOL with them, whereas these guys, if you get on a map where flamethrowers are shit, this whole squad is going to be shit, because all they do is pull out flamethrowers or use whatever primary you gave them. So, there's that. But, on the maps that they are good, you're getting 2 more flamethrowers, which means that you can have 3 guys get killed and still have a flamethrower to kill people with, which is huge. They're also premium, so you get the premium bonuses and, you know, all the bells and whistles. So, with that, I'm going to leave you with the B-roll. Let me know down below where you think the flamethrowers rank on the list of degenerate playstyles. Honestly, it's probably kind of annoying to be on the receiving end, but if there's only one guy in the other team running around with flamethrowers the whole time, I'm honestly probably not going to notice. Like, I'm going to be like, oh look, there's flamethrowers, but there's flamethrowers all the time in most of my games, so, it is what it is. I don't think it's that annoying. I don't think it's that scummy. Admittedly, the crowd control aspect of it and the potential to kill your own teammates, a little bit scummy, but like, score-wise and whatnot, it seems pretty average. So, I don't think it feels that bad to be on the receiving end, and I don't think it feels that bad to use it. It's pretty average. As per usual, get out there, kick ass, take names, and win your games.